Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for today's webcast. My name is Brooke Bacon, Marketing Lead with GSI, and I am also very pleased to welcome our main presenter, Kyle Gray, Solution Consultant in Security and Fraud Protection with GSI. And now before I get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our Safe Harbor Statement. And now for a quick overview of today's meeting, which will last about 60 minutes. First, we would like to take a minute to go over a couple of housekeeping items as well as a brief company overview. And then I will turn it over to Kyle for our main presentation. Then we'll take a minute to go over upcoming educational events, and then we will wrap up with a 10-minute question and answer session. If you would like to submit a question, you can do so through the questions panel at the bottom of the GoToWebinar console window located on the right side of your screen. Please note that questions will be answered as they come in, but if you can also submit them and we will answer questions at the end of the webcast as well. If you would like to minimize your console during the if you'd like to minimize your GoToWebinar console during the presentation, just click the right-facing arrow key at the top left of the console. Clicking the left arrow key will return your console so that you can input your questions. And now I'd like to give you a brief overview of GSI. GSI is a full-service J.D. Edwards consulting organization. We are an Oracle Platinum partner that was founded in 2004 and now has over 100 employees. We have offices nationwide and are recognized on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the U.S. And we specialize in project consulting, managed services, cloud and hosting services, with all of our services backed with a 100% guarantee. We also provide a broad spectrum of business, functional, and technical consulting services for Oracle NetSuite, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and other enterprise applications. And in addition, we are a product development company that has many popular products, including Genius, which is our advanced monitoring and performance analytics solution for J.D. Edwards or any business critical system on any platform. Genesis, which is our load stress testing application for system design, validation, or expansion for J.D. Edwards or any web-based business critical system. G Shield, which is our comprehensive security solution for J.D. Edwards, including password reset and two-factor authentication. And we also have Rapid Reconciler, which allows you to effectively manage your inventory, in-transit, and R&V reconciliation processes for any version of E1 or World. And finally, we have Rapid Approval, which is a Salesforce App Exchange solution that streamlines the approval request process. All right, and now I'd like to turn things over to Kyle for the main presentation.
All right, thank you, Brooke. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. Good morning and afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. We're going to discuss a few things today, and today's agenda includes an overview of what GRC is, the COSO Framework, how GRC applies to JDE, and then we'll briefly go over some of the GSI security practice offerings and how they can assist with meeting some of these standards we're about to talk about. Go ahead, Brooke. All right, so what is GRC? Corporate governance, enterprise risk management, regulatory compliance. There are many industry standards that businesses are already or either already are or should striving to achieve, excuse me. For instance, pharmaceutical businesses, they most likely are trying to achieve GMP or good manufacturing practices, while businesses dealing with money may be adhering to the GAAP structure, which is a generally accepted accounting principles. One standard that's really not mentioned very much is GRC. Again, GRC stands for the governance, risk, and compliance. You can see the GRC if you didn't make that out already. GRC is basically the broad terminology used to cover a company's strategy for corporate governance, enterprise risk management, and compliance with regulatory requirements. Or another one I like is GRC is the integrated collection of capabilities that enable an organization to reliably achieve objectives, address uncertainty, and act with integrity. Yes, that one was picked straight off the internet. I like that one. That's clear and concise in what you're trying to achieve with a GRC implementation. So let's take a little bit deeper look into what the different aspects of GRC. So governance, the G in the GRC. Governance is defined as the overall approach and control of management information systems to ensure that the information reaching the executive team is complete, accurate, and timely in order to support management's decisions. So in other words, the communication, or excuse me, there needs to be clear, complete, accurate, timely communication around all aspects of your security structure. Timely disclosure of events. There are many laws and regulations that around reporting adverse events within a certain time frame. Hiding or delaying these particular instances could result in severe consequences and impact company revenue and reputation. So it's definitely something that you have to adhere to, is the timely disclosure, and that's sometimes the hard part. Who is driving GRC? It's mainly our shareholders and our board of directors, but shareholders and board of directors, they have a high demand for performance along with high levels of transparency. So some other factors of some driving factors are regulations and enforcement are unpredictably changing more often. So regulations, requirements, they're all evolving very frequently. So it's hard to keep up, but it has to be done. The cost of addressing risk and requirements are skyrocketing because of this evolution of change so much. And then the harsh, or frankly scary, if you will, impact when threats and opportunities are not identified and addressed accordingly. Go ahead, Bert. So the R in GRC, risk. Risk management is the set of processes basically which a company will identify, analyze, and respond to threats based on the likelihood and severity, if you will, of those perceived threats. This process should be a continuous one and should involve various levels of the business: management, non-management, above management, so on. And that's just to be sure that all potential risks are accounted for. So for JDE, this means involving business, not only IT, which controls the security system, but the business and internal audit. All three of those need to be involved in this risk assessment and the risk portion of GRC. The resulting risk matrix that is designed needs to be published and communicated to the appropriate people to help ensure that the processes and procedures that were derived are being adhered to. Go ahead, Bert. So for instance, a risk here. This is the risk chart. You can tell it goes from green all the way to yellow, orange, and red. Severity being red. One main aspect of this here, this diagram, in the second diagram, it's a clip from an Oracle patching update that they sent out. This particular one I use because you can see in the highlighted that I'll get into in a second is a 9.8, and that's out of a 10, folks. So it's high severity. But one main aspect of this, and probably the toughest of risk, is identifying and prioritizing potential risk. Oracle sends these critical patches out, like I mentioned, for security vulnerabilities, and they send them out pretty regularly. This should be something that someone within the organization is monitoring and looking for, and checking to see what is out there for the particular system you're running. In this particular update, it lists, I didn't get down to the specifics, but this one lists 301 unique new security fixes for across multiple products. This is not all for 9.2, but the fixes for the 9.2, which again you see in this top line, the severity, the base score, if you will, is a 9.8. That's out of 10. So we're going to throw that in the very likely and severe portion, which is the high in that above diagram. You can see that the remote exploit without authorization, yes, you can. It has a yes. You can be. This particular risk is a remote one. Not only on site or hands inside the network, it can be done remotely. And it is a network breach. The attack complexity is low, so again, very likely to happen. That's why we would put it up there. So again, this all has to do with building your framework and understanding the risks that your particular system and company have, and then obviously prioritizing those risks. All right, go ahead, Brooke. And finally, the C is compliance. Compliance is the process of conforming to regulatory requirements, whether they are set at the local, state, national, or international level. Absolute adherence to regulatory requirements is not mandatory, but when adherence is not possible or practical, appropriate mitigations need to be put in place. You can't just say, oh yeah, this person's going to do this just because. It has to be documented, it has to be mitigated, and it needs to be tracked. And it needs to be communicated appropriately and actively reviewed to ensure that the mitigations are being followed. So that's just a for instance. These duties would need to be segregated out. This maybe how you're going to be compliant is to segregate these duties. The business accepts the risk of when a mitigation is entered. The business accepts a risk of, okay, this person can perform these duties, but they have to be able to perform these duties altogether because the size of our company or the size of this particular department and so on. But again, the business will assume the risk. But if it's mitigated and documented, that's still a compliant system. And then let's not forget about GDPR. It's the General Data Protection Regulation. So if you have any European ties, or you have subsidiaries, or you deal with companies in Europe, then you most likely have to adhere to the GDPR requirements. And then the 21 CFR Part 11, I just put that in there because that was another big one with that kind of pertains to the FDA. And then finally, and probably the more well-known one is the Sarbanes-Oxley, the SOX. Again, that goes back to my my segregation of duties. And SOX pertains to majority of the world, but when you're talking JDE, it's more of a SOX compliance system versus a GDPR type requirements and that sort of thing. So there are differences, and SOX is what we typically deal with. And then finally, the law within itself. You're trying to comply with any other state, local, or federal laws that don't really have to pertain with the security system or the system itself. Employment laws. So it's not just in your security or your system, your information system, if you will. There's all different levels of compliance. Again, today I just wanted to mention that today we're going to focus on the system level. Go ahead, Brooke. So I mentioned earlier about this COSO framework. The COSO stands for Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadwell Commission. So COSO is the definitive standard which organizations measure the effectiveness of their internal control systems. It's a framework that they're able to take and use, build upon if needed, but mainly fall back on if their plan is not coming to fruition, or they're having trouble even starting the plan whatsoever. And COSO is made up of 5 components. It's the control environment, the risk assessment, the control activities, information and communication, and monitoring activities. We're going to get a little bit more in depth in each of those from a high level standpoint, and then the last section is how does GRC and using COSO work in JD Edwards. So go ahead, Brooke. So diving into the COSO framework a bit more. Again, the first component is the control environment. So this deals with the ethical values of the company. What type of core values does your company have and hold on to? Do they enforce these particular values? You have to have commitment from your board of directors. Board of directors, must be aware, involved in, and positive with the company's GRC plan. If they don't have the blessing of the board of directors, it may be hard to get the blessing of some other folks within the company. So that's why commitment for board of directors is very crucial when implementing or using this type of framework. Organizational structure, authority and responsibility. Who and how are people being held responsible for ensuring GRC is being achieved based on the company's outline? So the company's gone through and outlined how we want to do this and how this should be done. Well, who's responsible for it? Who has the authority to do what and say what? And then obviously if the company has HR policy and procedures, we won't go into that, but I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Those are clearly a control environment, high level type of control. All right, risk assessment. Risk assessment consists of company and process objectives, risk identification and analysis. What steps in the company is the company taking to identify the risks and analyze the potential or already conceived impact on the business related to these risks? Identifying the risk is only half the battle. You must analyze and act on the risks. So risk identification analysis, this portion here is crucial in the GRC. Not that the others aren't, but this one seems to either take a backseat or get put in kind of the backseat portion of it. So very important. And then obviously change management. What are the change management processes in the event of an attempted or even successful hack, breach, or regulation failure? How will the company learn from it and change their processes to prevent it from happening again? All right, control activities, policies and procedures. What and who, for that matter, is in place to maintain the company's plan for GRC? Security, is your security model, questions thinking, is your security model and the activities involved in maintaining that model documented? If they're documented or not documented, are they adhered to within your organization guidelines? Application change management, again, we talked about a little bit of change management. Business continuity, backup, and disaster recovery. This is a huge one. People always say that they're ready, or they think they're ready, or they need to get ready for the disaster, but it's always an afterburner, an afterthought. So stuff to think about. Does the business have a consistent schedule of backups? What tables or what is being backed up? What is the revert plan in the event of a disaster? And if you have a plan, has this plan been tested to ensure that the business can continue without impact, or at least with minimal impact? And then outsourcing. Are the outsourced personnel being managed and monitored? What steps are being taken to ensure our outsourced activities are being monitored and are GRC compliant with the company's or based on the company's guidelines? Information and communication. This is a big one. There's only got 2 points, but it's a big one. The quality of information. Be sure that the information you are either presenting or receiving represents the company's GRC policies and procedures, or backs them up, if you will. So you've got these guidelines, you have these procedures. Is the information you're receiving or the information you're giving out, presenting to auditors, to management, to board of directors, whatever it may be, does that directly relate to your GRC plan and be able to back that up? And then the effectiveness of communication. Communication is key. Being in the field on projects myself, I get to see extreme varying levels of communication. I won't go into any specifics, but thus why I'm stressing communication is a huge key. Communication at all levels must be clear and timely, especially when business risks are involved. Again, talking about the repercussions and that sort of thing. Don't be afraid to bring them forward. They need to be brought to the forefront rather than sitting in the background and possibly continuing to grow. And then having clear and concise channels of communication only strengthens the company's plan immensely. So I can't stress information, the quality of information, and the effectiveness of how you communicate. And then finally, monitoring. What types of monitoring is the company doing to evaluate and report deficiencies within the GRC plan? Do they have ongoing monitoring, separate evaluations, reporting deficiencies? How are they doing all of these things? Monitoring, in my opinion, or in our opinion, should include a strict plan and courses of action when deficiencies are found. And for instance, segregation of duties again. These reports, if you are trying to achieve or are SOX compliant, you have to maintain that's hopefully that it maintains itself, but one can't assume that. So segregation of duty reports need to be ran. Weekly, probably not. I think that's a bit much. Monthly, okay, we're getting there. Quarterly, I would say yes. Quarterly is depending on the size and the business risks and the amount and types of business that you perform in JD Edwards. I would say that monthly is a starting point. Quarterly is a good starting point. If there's many issues, maybe you pump that up to once a month until the issues are resolved and it's at a better state. But regardless, running SOD reports if you're a SOX compliant system is a must. I know auditors have to and do look at those SOD reports and dissect those. And then the plan, it would need to include the steps and timelines, more importantly, timelines to remedy any of these SOD conflicts. So the monitoring is not just a high level, okay, here's what's happening. It needs to have a set of procedures and a set of processes that are documented and adhered to. So to sum it up, all the COSO components just discussed work to establish the foundation for a sound and effective internal control process. I think that sounds good. So again, the COSO components work to establish a sound foundation and an effective internal control process. All right. So now that we know an overall concept of GRC, let's see how implementing GRC for JD Edwards and using the COSO framework what it would look like and how it would go. So again, we're going to go through the environments, but we're going to do them more of a project-based standpoint. So in the control environment, who is driving the implementation for GRC for JD Edwards? Who in the company is the driving force to make sure the project gets started and achieves its goals? Typically, that is best if it comes from the business. If the business leaders are on board, again, the shareholders or upper management or some type of management, and it's not just being portrayed by the IT staff or the IT department, it tends to go more fluent and smoother. I mean, that's just the way it is, or at least what I've seen out in the force. So, always having the knowing and having the driving force is a good key component. Do the participants does the project staff have the authority to make changes? So whoever's sponsoring the project, do they trust the project team to make the necessary adjustments and not have to go and get sign off each time? Or that impacts and delays projects, and it stretches out over time. So having an effective and trustworthy communicative, if I said that right, excuse me, project team is key. Risk assessment. Again, we're going to go through it, but from the project standpoint, company and process objectives. What are the company's processes and objectives? Segregation of duties within a security model. Are you trying to become SOX compliant? Are you the recent recipient of a failed audit? Ease of maintenance related to that model. or the ease of reporting and audit purposes. So you may not be failing the audit. Your system may be secure, or they may have minimal changes, but to report that and to timely report that, I guess effectively report that to the auditors. Are you doing this GRC project to ease that portion in particular? Identifying and analyzing risk. Have a security assessment done. If you're not sure, you believe you are, you've done good on some audits and then some audits have come back, well, maybe it's time to have a full-on security assessment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But, a non-intrusive but yet informative way of a third party telling you how your security is, where the risks are, potential areas of high, low, medium level risks, and how to remedy those. And then this will tell you what you're doing, how you're doing it, areas and levels of risk, and how to remediate anything necessary. So risk assessment, I harped on it in the previous section we were talking about, but this is one of the most important. And if you get this particular portion down, it makes the whole process a bit easier. All right, yeah. Control activities. Conduct security, implement changes to JD security first. That's what we're talking about here in the project wise. Starting with, how are you going to, what you need to achieve. It's been discussed. It's been designed, laid out, signed off on. How do you do it? So our opinion is to conduct security design workshops by module or department. And these are to help identify the different JDE processes that each department performs. So for instance, AP, accounts payable. AP will have multiple processes they perform, from the entering voucher, matching the voucher, paying the voucher, so on, so forth. Identify and construct roles for each of those processes so that they can be handed out in a segregation of duties standpoint to the appropriate users. So again, this is where the segregation of duties comes in, and part of one of the main components in implementing a SOX compliance system. Define processes that should not be combined and would ultimately create a business risk if assigned to the same user. So basically compliance, this is your compliance definitions. This is where the monitoring comes back in. Running SOD reports. You've defined this duty or this process combined with this process. So for instance, having the ability to, enter a vendor and enter a voucher and pay the voucher. So you could potentially set up a fictitious vendor, create a fictitious voucher, pay that voucher to that vendor, which is linked to your bank account. There's fraud right there. Could be done, probably currently is being done out in the world as we speak, but having this type of system or segregation of duties monitoring in place will help prevent that. Will it prevent that? It depends on the structure and the size of the company and who's allowed to do what, but it can only help. And then finally, user acceptance testing. Once the defined new model is implemented and is designed and is signed off on from a compliance standpoint, it's got to be tested. It's got to be tested and made sure that all the functionality is there and that each person can do their job based on the new requirements. And then once tested, you have to update your processes and procedures. If not, over time and in short time, those procedures and processes could be lost. New hires come on, there's nothing for them to look at, so they learn word of mouth or looking, watching a superior. That's hopefully your superior is very good, but if it's not documented and the processes and procedures aren't documented, a lot can be left out, and that leaves room for errors. And there's your risk. There's the potential risk right there that I mentioned. So document processes and procedures is big. Information and communication. As discussed before, communicate early and often, be concise and accurate, solicit feedback to improve the end result. So the project team should be willing and able to provide feedback or recommendations on any and all of the project related material. And then again, as mentioned before, but communication is a vital component of a security project, or any project for that matter. And it should always be concise and timely, accurate, complete, so on. Soliciting feedback is great. You do it any chance you get. You never know if the idea or thought that you have that you may think that doesn't pertain to your company's plan or your company's business model, security model, and so on. It may be the next major concern or major issue that your company faces. So I like to say and live by, no question or idea is a bad one. Or a dumb one, whatever you say. But yes, always have the more willingness and eagerness out of the project team, the more successful that the project overall can be. And again, that's one of the main components is information and communication. And lastly, our monitoring aspect of the project. Again, monitoring is the big piece of the pie at the end. It's how you ensure that all the new processes and procedures put into place over the course of the project are actually in place and effectively and efficiently being used. So how do you monitor after a project? Well, you can create custom reports. Again, SOD reports, access reports, critical process lists. So you can say, I want to know who has the ability to add, change, and delete P0411 voucher entry, P0911 journal entries, who can run R09801, which is posting batches. So all of your critical programs or UBEs, you can create a custom report and have that report either run on either run manually or on the scheduler, automatically, or on the scheduler. To that degree is okay, who and to what extent is the monitor allowed to change criteria within the reports? There's a risk. Again, if someone's allowed to, are they given this authority to run reports and change the data that the report reports on? Then that's a risk. It could be a risk for the business that they're getting fraudulent reports. So just because you've implemented this great security model and structure new and it's live, it has to be taken to the nth degree, and that goes down all the way to, great, we know how the monitoring is going to be done, who's going to do it, and how can we verify or how can we ensure that what this person or these persons are presenting is accurate. And then independent evaluations of security. So we touched on it before, but a third-party assessment to validate the compliance that you have or you possibly think you have. Is the company subject to audits? If you are you meeting the audit requirements? If you're not, and you're continually not, but maybe not, failing per se the audit, but you need help, then, reach out and get some independent evaluations on how the data or the criteria can be compiled and reported on, so that auditors are, for the lack of better words, off your back. And then, has the new model, one of the questions you have to ask, has the new model met all the requirements of the original GRC plan? So if you can answer that without having the assessment or anyone else come in and audit your system, if you will, then I say you've successfully completed the GRC project. All right, so we'll go over a few of our security practice offerings that pertain to everything that we kind of just discussed, and I'll give you some information on each of these briefly, and that they can assist in achieving your GRC compliance model within your organization. Then by all means, feel free to reach out, and then we'll get to some questions here in a minute. So security assessment, we've covered it. We come in, we can either do this remotely or on site. We prefer on site because the conversations and issue resolution time is a bit easier versus working remote, phone calls or emails. But basically this is it's intrusive, but it's because we're in your system digging around. But we go into your system, analyze it, run some reports, pull some certain data, and we come out with a assessment report that lets you know where some high levels of risks are, where your system is, where there's some flaws in the system, and then we have some recommendations on how to remedy these types of things. We help in security strategy and design. So you know you need to do something, you have the team to do it, you don't really know exactly how to do it or how to piece it all together. We can come in and provide that type of help. Audit and SOX compliance, we've talked about, you know, how and when run these SOD reports, set them up. Should they be on scheduler? Should they be run departmentalized, full on? So basically an audit and SOX compliance plan. And for security optimization, and then full service security implementation. Not only can we give you the ideas and the tools to move forward with your own, but we can come in and also do the full implementation for you. We can be that project team and work hand in hand with you, a partnership, if you will. The security process design, optimization and automation processes, and then a big feature, once you have all of this, do you have the team or the personnel manpower to manage your new security model or your existing one? So we offer Secure Care, which is a managed services basically for security. We handle requests, user creations, anything like that. So if any of these pertain or look interesting, or you would like more information, or you would like assistance in any of these areas, by all means reach out to anyone at GSI. Go to our website. I believe you have my information from this webinar, and I'd be glad to even just have some conversations with you to answer some questions. Speaking of questions, I believe that's where we're at, Brooke, and finished a little early, so sorry about that, but we've got a little bit of time for some questions.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kyle. That was great. Before we jump into some questions, I just want to cover a few follow-up items, and then we will move into our question and answer section. Our webcast today is part of our free ongoing educational webcast series on JD Edwards. And to view our most up-to-date schedule, please visit us at www.getgsi.com/webcasts. And we provide extensive free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our weekly educational webcasts, our monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider, our online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, and so much more. And we also have on-site and virtual workshops. Now, if you would like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for upcoming webcasts or our monthly newsletter, or to create an account to access our resource center, go to getgsi.com, go to platforms on the main menu, and select the platform, the JD Edwards platform right here. And then you can select the appropriate link on the left for the newsletter, webcast, or resources. All right. All right, so
while you got some questions coming in, Brooke, I wanted to mention, and you're prioritizing or putting those together, the security team is also going to be doing, you mentioned workshops. We're going to be doing some lunch and learns coming up. They're going to be, I believe they're going to be on site for sure at some of our regional offices, but I believe we're going to offer them from an online standpoint too. So if you're out in the security world or in that realm, and you want to join one of those, by all means, please do. We should have a calendar out fairly soon of some lunch and learn events and topics, and by all means, pick one, and we'd love to have you.
Great, thank you so much, Kyle. I just want to remind everybody that if you would like to, we have a couple questions submitted already, but if you would still like to submit a question, you can do so through the question panel in the GoToWebinar console window. And if you minimized your console earlier, just click the left-facing arrow key to redisplay the questions panel. Okay, Kyle, our first question comes from Mark, and he says, about how long does it take to implement a compliant security system?
Okay, well, that's Mark. Did you say Mark?
Yep.
Sorry. Didn't, well, that can be a loaded question, or loaded with answers anyway. It depends on the size of the company, the framework of their what they do in JD Edwards, but I can give you an rough estimate. We have done them anywhere from, and again, depends on size of the company and stuff, but anywhere from 5 weeks to 18 weeks. So hopefully that answers your question. Again, it covers all of the aspects that we just did here, and probably a little more from a project standpoint. But it can be done as quick as 5 weeks, I know for sure, because I was on that one. And then, the longest we've had, which was somewhere right around a 3,000 user base system, was about 18 weeks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right. And our next question is from Valerie, and she says, what is the level of effort from a personnel standpoint is needed to implement a GRC security system?
That's actually a really good question. So you said, what's the level of effort personnel-wise?
Yep.
Well, the more the merrier, to be honest. That's the short answer. But that's not always feasible. I mean, the business still has to run. So typically, you're not starting up a JD Edwards software and implementing this. This is, security or GRC compliance is done after the fact. I mentioned it. It gets put on the back burner. So you're operating in a live environment. So we have ways to perform these projects concurrent with production, daily production, business production. So to answer your question, other than the project team, SMEs, subject matter experts, are crucial. So we've got to have one of those, at least one of those, in each of the designated JDE modules or areas, functional areas. They help become the driving force for the project team. So let's say we're coming in, we're going to rely on the SMEs to give us any and all information that we don't have or need for their particular department. You want to go a level above that. We need extremely, I wouldn't say extreme, but let's say we need JDE savvy folks that use it on somewhat of a regular basis to participate in the UAT testing. UAT testing has to be a full-on comprehensive testing process. So I would typically, we recommend 2 per module there. So I'm going to get you a number here in a minute. And then above that, we need, project leadership. That goes either to the board of directors or the PM or the IT director, whoever that project's lead is, has to be one of the driving forces. So to answer the question, a solid team overall of 10 plus people to make it successful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kyle. That appears to be the end of our questions today. So thank you, everybody, for your questions. And thank you so much, Kyle, for your presentation today. And then as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. And you will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on the website where you can access the recording from today's webcast as well as a copy of the presentation. And after today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. And if you have any follow-up questions for myself or Kyle, you can contact us, and our contact information is on the screen currently. And we want to thank you again for attending today, and thank you so much again, Kyle, for your presentation. And we hope
Absolutely.
you guys, oh, thanks. No, you're good. Thank you so much. And we hope that you guys have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Kyle. Bye.